Welcome everyone today. We're glad to have you tied in for our weekend meeting. To begin, we're going to give praise to Jehovah by singing together song number 127, and it's titled, "The Sort of Person I Should Be." And let us please give our attention as he delivers her talk. Does the truth affect your life?
Pilate did not understand the man that was standing before him this day. He had judged many men before, but somehow this man was different. He asked him a question that was important. That's why he was there. Are you the King of the Jews? Jesus gave him a surprising reply to him. Pilate's response to that was, "Who are you then?" Let's see what Jesus said next. Let's open our Bibles to John 18:37. In John 18 and verse 37, so Pilate said to him, "Well then, are you a king?" Jesus answered, "You yourself are saying that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is on the side of truth listens to my voice." Yes, Jesus clearly explained the reason why he came to earth. Yes, he did answer whether he was a king, but did you note what he said? I came into this world that I should bear witness to the truth. The truth. Well, you can see by Pilate's response when he heard those words, the truth. Look at that in verse 38. Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" Yes, to Pilate's mind, this Roman, this Greek-influenced mind, truth was something philosophers debated about. People had all different views. But was that what was Jesus talking about? Was he talking about that type of truth? No, not at all. He wasn't talking about that truth, some physical truth or metaphysical truth. He was talking about divine truth, truth about Jehovah, about his purposes. That's what he was talking about. Yes, and that's what he came to do, to express this to people, to bear witness to this truth, because it's what would help people. It would help people to have a meaningful life. Now, where is this truth found? Well, Jesus showed or directed people to where they could find truth. If you look at John 17, verse 17, you can just see on this occasion, this is in prayer to his Father, Jesus expressed where truth is found. In John 17:17, he says, "Sanctify them by means of the truth. Your word is truth." So the scriptures, the Bible, that's the truth. That's where we can find truth about Jehovah God and about his purposes. Divine truth, that's where it's located. And that's what Jesus came to bear witness, to encourage as many as possible to respond to that message, to accept it, and allow divine truth to affect their lives. Now, Jesus discussed this on many occasions. He discussed how important it is to get to know Jehovah, his Father, to get to know his thinking, and to allow his thinking to affect our thoughts, our decisions in life. I just love what it says in John 8. If we look there, just notice what Jesus said about how the truth can affect people. In John chapter 8, and verse 31 and 32, he says this. He says, then Jesus went on to say to the Jews who had believed him, if you remain in my word, you are really my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, that is very interesting. That was the effect that the truth, divine truth, would have on them. It would set them free. Well, if you look down in verse 34, it kind of sets us free from what? Well, verse 34, Jesus answered them, most truly I say to you, every doer of sin is a slave of sin. And then verse 36, so if the Son sets you free, you will truly be free. So, of course, what Jesus was talking about, this freedom, the truth could help us, is being a slave to sin. Yes, it's true. You, me, we're all imperfect. We all make mistakes. We all are sinners. But we don't have to be a slave to sin. That's what Jesus was talking about. He was saying there could be a release from this, we could call it the greatest bondage or oppression that mankind has ever felt. And that's being this slave of sin. And it's interesting to think about it, is not only can sin lead us to doing what is bad, but it can also prevent us from doing what is good. And that, in fact, is something we're going to be talking about in our Watchtower, how we can make sure that we're being affected by the truth about Jehovah to the point that we are doers of good. We are imitating him in supporting our family, our spiritual family. Yes, if we're a slave to sin, if we allow this imperfection to rule our lives, to guide us in our decisions, then we will experience frustration. We will experience pain. We'll experience suffering. Not that we can't experience some of those things, but Jesus pointed divine truth would set us free. We would have hope. We would know that we could one day permanently be free from not only from sin, from Adamic sin. Now, when we think of slavery, this term slavery, a lot of times we think of what's happened throughout history, and there's been literal slaves, physical slaves. We know the history of many countries, and even right now, there's reports in the Walk Free Foundation that says there's about 45 million literal slaves. Some of them, like 10 million or so, being children. There's slaves right now in the classical sense of what people would refer to as slavery. But it's interesting, sociologists say there's another type of slavery, not just this literal slavery, and this other type is more prevalent in the world today. It's all around us. And what they say, it's a slavery to things. For instance, electronic gadgets, a slave to television, to phones. Maybe it's to work. Maybe it's to recreation. Maybe it's to a thing such as, maybe it's alcohol, or maybe it's cigarettes. These things can start to control our lives and affect us to the point that we no longer make decisions based on our relationship with Jehovah, but we base it on things. We base it on our gadgets, our work, our recreation. Yes, it's these things that can enslave us. That's very prevalent, and it can stop you and me from having a good relationship with Jehovah. This is a slavery that each one of us have to examine ourselves. Are we perhaps in a certain way enslaved to these things? Now, the wonderful thing that Jesus expressed, and in fact, Jehovah expressed, is no matter what our background, our situation in life, you and me, we can make a choice. We don't have to be, so to speak, because of our background or because of the language we speak or situation in our life. We're not doomed to be following one course. Yes, we can choose to serve Jehovah. We can choose divine truth. We can choose to allow the truth to affect our lives. Let's just see an example of this. If we open our Bibles to Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 19 and 20. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19 and 20. Of course, this is Jehovah speaking to the Israelites, but just take note of these words here, 19 and 20. It says, I take the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you today, that I have put life and death before you, the blessing and the curse. And you must choose life so that you may live, you and your descendants, by loving Jehovah your God, by listening to his voice, and by sticking to him. For he is your life, and by him you will endure a long time in the land that Jehovah swore to give to your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Jehovah was telling the Israelites they had a choice. Now, why did he perhaps say you have a choice? Well, just think about the Israelites, maybe a little bit of what you know about them. You know, they were slaves. They were literal slaves in Egypt. They had just come through a horrendous situation. There they are. Jehovah's telling them they have a choice. They don't have to allow because they grew up as slaves in Egypt. They don't have to allow because they were poverty stricken. They didn't have maybe the education because of being slaves in Egypt. They didn't have to allow any of this to affect them. They could choose life. Now, what was the key? What was the key? Well, there it says in verse 20, loving Jehovah, listening to his voice, sticking to him. That's it. That's it. They could choose life. They could allow the truth that they would know from God's law to affect them. And this is what they had to do. Continue to love Jehovah, continue to listen to him, continue to stick close to him. And then, as it says there, they would have a wonderful life. They would enjoy life to the best way possible, despite living in this world today, in the imperfect, an earth full of imperfect humans. Yes, they could have a good life, endure a long time. Now, this is something that we want to think about as we go through the rest of our information today, is just to think if we're making the right choice, if we've made the choice, if we've chosen life. Now, the truth has affected many thousands of individuals in a very positive way. Despite the circumstances they find themselves in, the situation in life, they have a meaningful life despite what things they can't be changed. They can't be changed right now, but they can have real happiness. They enjoy a freedom because of this, because of the truth. Now, let's just think about why the truth can be so practical and beneficial for people. Now, we know in the United States, there's been many natural disasters. In fact, one organization associated with the United Nations, they say in the US since 1980, there's been 308 weather and climate disasters that have reached or exceeded $1 billion. 308 since 1980. What they also say is that in the last 5 years, there's been more that the majority of these events have taken place in the last 5 years. So they say, like, in 40 years, they spent $2 trillion, but in the last 5 years, $650 billion has been spent on construction and helping people in various ways to support ones. Now, the point that I just want to make is, just imagine if you were living in one of those places. Maybe it's Louisiana, maybe it's California, maybe it's here in the Northeast, some of the recent events. Now just imagine that you read a scripture like Isaiah 63 and verse 9, and you see how Jehovah, the Creator, feels about things. Well, if you look in Isaiah 63 and verse 9, it says there, it says, during all their distress, it was distressing to him, and his own personal messenger saved them. In his love and in compassion, he repurchased them, and he lifted them up and carried them all the days of old. Now, of course, this is talking about the Israelites, but what we want to draw when we're going through distresses, who is it distressing to? To Jehovah, the Creator. He feels what we're going through. So with these events that are happening all around us, he feels them. And he not only just feels them, he does something about them. What does he do? What's practical help? Of course, we know the hope, but what practical help is given? Well, we have scriptures such as Proverbs 22:3. The shrewd one sees dangers and conceals themselves. That's what it says there. So that helps practically to see how we all need to act wisely and prepare for emergency. We get encouraged to be prepared for these type of events. Or we have a principle like in 1 Timothy 6:7-8. It says, we have brought nothing into the world, and neither can we carry anything out. And that's just the principle of life over things. You know, to escape a disaster, we need to sacrifice perhaps things in order to escape. And so these are practical points. Of course, we know the solution to these problems, what God, Jehovah, has promised to do, and that's going to happen in the future, but there's practical help right now. This affects people. Imagine if you were one of those people, and now you read verses like this from the scriptures, the truth from God's word, the divine truth, how much comfort and relief. It doesn't change things, but you see that Jehovah cares, that he wants us not to be unduly affected in a negative way. He wants us to see that we're able to stay alive, endure a long time. Now, there's other things too the truth helps with. Now, if you grow up in or lived in another part of the world, yeah, there's very difficult situations. For instance, just take, for instance, Congo. In Eastern Congo, there's been a war since 1994 going on, kind of a civil war going on. And that's been happening, and it's caused the death of over 6 million people. Or you have Angola, which a civil war ended in 2002, but the end result is the infrastructure has been completely destroyed, and people are dealing with that on a daily basis. Or take Malawi. Malawi is a country that's the 5th poorest in the world. Now imagine you're in those places, and then you read a scripture like Psalms 37, 9 and 10. Psalms 37, verse 9 and 10. There it says, "For evil men will be done away with, but those hoping in Jehovah will possess the earth. Just a little while longer, and the wicked one will be no more. You will look at where they were, and they will not be there. But the meek ones will possess the earth, and they will find their exquisite delight in the abundance of peace." Yes, verses like this can be quite comforting. It can be quite encouraging if you're living in places like that. And the facts show that that's true. For instance, in the last 5 years in Malawi, over 7,300 individuals have been baptized. They've learned divine truth, and they're allowing it to affect their lives. In Angola, the average has been 11,000 each year. In Congo, it's been 14,600 every year the last 5 years. Why is this happening? Because the truth helps people to be set free. People see how the truth is practical, divine truth from God's word. It helps people to have a better life despite the situation, the challenging, difficult situation that they are in. There's other examples that we could turn to, but just something else that the truth helps ones with is with, things, maybe it's alcohol. This is something that people become enslaved to. I appreciate this experience from this man named Jimmy. And he started drinking at an early age. He was about 16, and soon, very quickly, he became drunk every day. And he went on to say that basically he would drink 3 bottles of rum and smoke 60 cigarettes every day. He was so enslaved to these things that when he ran out of money, he would drink alcohol out of the cleaning solution that he used for cleaning windows. He would see his mom's cologne and he would say, "It says alcohol in here," and he would just drink it back. I mean, that's how enslaved he was to all of this. He even tried to get help, and he went to a detoxification center. But even that, after being there for a year and a half, he fell back into this alcohol problem, being enslaved to it. Well, eventually he started studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses. And, to be honest, he says, I would excuse myself during the study because I would go and get a drink or two during the study. And because he wasn't allowing the truth to affect his life, he kept on having setbacks. He would stop studying. And in fact, he stopped studying 6 times. And one day, after he'd stopped studying, he happened to read the verse in Proverbs 24:16, which says, "The righteous one may fall 7 times and he will get up again." Of course, that is talking about something else, not his situation, because there it says the righteous man. And it's really, the context is showing how when we encounter problems as servants of God, that Jehovah will help us up and support us. That's the thinking behind it. But in his mind, he saw that idea, someone fell 6 times and they got up. And that verse gave him courage to start studying again. So he started the 7th time, and that time he made it. he kept on studying. He got baptized. Why? Because he started loving Jehovah. He started listening to his words, not just acknowledging him, but listening and taking him down in his heart. And then he did that last thing, like we read in Deuteronomy. He started sticking to Jehovah. And when he did those things, yes, he became part of Jehovah's family. He was able not only to be baptized, but he started pioneering. He became a ministerial servant, and he started serving in an area where there was need for more publishers. So all these things took place. He had a better life, all because he allowed the truth to affect his life. So that's a nice experience for us to think about. An example. There's many examples. Maybe some of them are you yourselves. You've seen how the truth has had a positive effect on your life. We just want to make sure that we choose divine truth. When we do this, we fully embrace it. We just don't appreciate or acknowledge it, but that we embrace it. We make it become part of our life. Because when we do that, we become part of Jehovah's family. And in Psalms 5 and verse 11 and 12, just think about this, what it says there, Psalms 5 and verse 11 and 12. It says this, "But all those who take refuge in you will rejoice. They will always shout joyfully. You will block approach to them, and those loving your name will rejoice in you, for you will bless anyone righteous, O Jehovah. You will surround them with approval as with a large shield." Isn't that just beautiful? You know, Jehovah, he gives us, he helps us to feel his smile of approval. And it's a protection for us. This is an excellent verse to, as we face challenges, to think about that what we're doing by allowing the truth to affect us in a positive way is making the creator of heaven and earth smile upon us. And because we're family, what is he going to do? Well, he's going to do as much as he can to support us with what we're going through. Like a loving father, he's going to pick us up at times. He's going to grab our hands because we're his family. We belong to him. Now you can see why, isn't it? What we read in John 18, why Jesus said to Pilate, "I came to bear witness to the truth," because the truth, divine truth, sets us free. It helps us to have the best life possible in this world. Let's turn back to John 8 and verse 31. We read these words earlier, but look at them again. We'll just look at verse 31. It says, "Then Jesus went on to say to the Jews who had believed him, 'If you remain in my word, you are really my disciples.'" Remain in my word. Yes, Jesus loved that ones were listening. They were responding to the truth. They were taking action. And thinking about the crowd that maybe was there with Jesus, it included the the disciples, the apostles. They were all there. So he saw a group of people, some that had started listening just right then, maybe a few minutes before, and then some that had been with him as he was preaching in the land of Israel. So that's where all of us today, we fit in. We're like that group. Maybe some of us have started very recently. Maybe some have started years ago. But the key for all of us is to remain. Now, I love in the Irish Bible, I lived in Ireland a few years. In the Irish Bible, in the Irish language, it has the word there for remain, and it's fawn. And it's interesting. Of course, that word in English, it means remain, but it kind of has like a deeper meaning for people that speak Irish. It's sometimes you can think about someone remaining somewhere as maybe someone waiting for something better to come along, like as a bus, you wait here, maybe under a shelter, you're protected, and then something better comes along and then you go off. But in the Irish language, this word has this meaning of there's no better place to be. This is where you want to be. And I just think about that at times, because I think, in a sense, we can draw that lesson is when we look at divine truth, there's no better place to be. We need to remain. We need to do as we talked about earlier in Deuteronomy 30, 19 and 20. We need to love Jehovah with all our heart, listen to him, stick to him. And if we do those things, then we're demonstrating to all that we're allowing the truth to affect our life.
We first want to thank Jehovah for the spiritual provision that he's provided. And also, brother, thank you for showing us how we can come to know and please Jehovah as we benefit from having the Bible's inspired message transform our conduct and inner person.